This one we will call Black Wall Street. This is a moment in black history. This is not taught in our schools. It's hard to believe. A moment in black history, never forget. Many thanks to our forefathers 88 years ago. The date was June 1st, 1921, Black Wall Street. The name fittingly given to one of the most affluent all black communities in America was bombed from the air and burnt to the ground by mobs of envious whites. In a period spanning fewer than 12 hours, a once thriving black business district in northern Tulsa lay smothering, a modern community destroyed, and a major African American economic movement resoundingly diffused. The night carnage left some 3,000 African Americans dead and over 600 successful businesses lost. Among these were 21 churches, 21 restaurants, 30 grocery stores, 2 movie theaters, plus a hospital, a bank, a post office, libraries, schools, law offices, a half a dozen private airplanes, and even a bus system. As could have been expected, the impetus behind it was the infamous Ku Klux Klan working in consult with ranking city officials and many sympathizers. The best description of Black Wall Street, or Little Africa as it was also known, would be compared to it a mini Beverly Hills. It was the golden door of the black community during the early 1900s, and it proved that African Americans could create a successful infrastructure. That's what Black Wall Street was all about. The dollar circulated 36 times, sometimes taking a year for currency to leave the community. Now a dollar leaves the black community in 15 minutes. As far as resources, there were PhDs residing in Little Africa, black attorneys, and doctors. One doctor was Dr. Berry, who owned the bus system. His average income was $500 a day, a healthy pocket change in 1910. It was a time when the entire state of Oklahoma had only 2 airports, yet 6 blacks owned their own planes. It was a very fascinating community. The mainstay of the community was to educate every child. Nepotism was the one word they believed in, and that's what we need to get back to. The main thoroughfare was Greenwood Avenue. It was intersected by Archer and Pine Street. From the first letters in each of these 3 names, you get GAP, Gap, and that's where the renowned R&B musical group, the Gap Band, got its name. They're from Tulsa. Black Wall Street was a prime example of the typical black community in America that did businesses, but it was in an unusual location. You see, at the time, Oklahoma was set aside to be a black and Indian state. There were over 28 black townships there. 1/3 of the people who traveled in the terrifying trails of tears alongside the Indians between 1830 and 1842 were black people. The citizens of this proposed Indian and black state chose a black governor, a treasurer from Kansas named McDade. But the Ku Klux Klan said that if he assumed the office, that they would kill him within 48 hours. A lot of blacks owned farmland, and many of them had gone into the oil business. The community was so tight and wealthy because they traded dollars hand to hand, and because they were dependent upon one another as a result of the Jim Crow laws. It was not unusual that if a resident home accidentally burnt down, it could be rebuilt within a few weeks by neighbors. This was the type of scenario that was going on day to day on Black Wall Street. When blacks intermarried into the Indian culture, some of them received their promised 40 acres and a mule, and with that came whatever oil was later found on the properties. On Black Wall Street, a lot of global businesses were conducted. The, the community flourished from the early 1900s until June 1st, 1921. That's when the largest massacre of non-military Americans in the history of this country took place, and it was led by the Ku Klux Klan. Imagine walking out of your front door seeing 1,500 homes being burnt. It must have been amazing. Survivors we interviewed think that the whole place was planned. The whole thing was planned because during the time that all this was going on, white families with their children stood around the borders of their community and watched the massacre, the looting and everything, much in the same manner they would watch a lynching. The riots weren't caused by anything black or white. It was caused by jealousy. A lot of white folks had come back from World War One and they were poor. When they looked over into the black communities and realized that the black men who fought in the war had come home heroes, that helped trigger the destruction. It cost the black community everything and not a single dime of restitution. No insurance claims have been awarded to the victims to this day. Nonetheless, they rebuilt. We estimate 1,500 to 3,000 people were killed, and we know that a lot of them were buried in mass graves all around the city. Some were thrown in the river. As a matter of fact, at 21st Street and Yale Avenue, where there now stands a Sears parking lot, that corner used to be a coal mine. They threw a lot of bodies into the shaft. Unmarked graves, Tulsa, Oklahoma, CNN. Beulah Smith and Kenny Booker, two elderly Oklahomans, lived through one of the worst race riots in U.S. history. A rarely mentioned 1921 Tulsa bloodbath that officially took thousands of African American lives. The Tulsa Race Riot Commission, formed 2 years ago to determine exactly what happened, will consider next week the controversial issue of what, if any, reparations should be paid to the known survivors of the riot, a group of less than 100 that includes Beulah Smith, now 92, and Kenny Booker, 86. The guns went off. The riot was on. On the night of May 31st, 1921, mobs called on the lynching of Dick Rowland, a black man who shined shoes. After hearing reports that on the previous day he had assaulted Sarah Page, a white woman, in the elevator she operated in a downtown building. A local newspaper had printed a fabricated story that Rowland tried to rape Page. In the editorial, the same newspaper said a hanging was planned for that night. As groups of both black and white converged on the Tulsa courthouse, a white man in the crowd confronted an armed black man, a war veteran who had joined with other blacks to protect Rowland. A fabricated newspaper story triggered the violent riots that left hundreds, if not thousands, dead. Commissioner member Eddie Faye Gates told CNN what happened next. This white man, she said, asked the black man, "What are you doing with this gun?" "I'm going to use it if I have to," the black man said, according to Gates. And the white man said, "No, you're not. Give it to me." And he tried to take it. The gun went off. The white man was dead. The riot was on. Truckloads of whites set fires and shot blacks on sight. When the smoke lifted the next day, more than 1,400 homes and businesses in Tulsa Greenwood District, a prosperous area known as the Black Wall Street, laid in ruins. Today, only a single block of the original buildings remains standing in the area. Experts now estimate that at least 3,000 died. "We're in a heck of a lot of trouble," Beulah Smith was 14 years old the night of the riot. A neighbor named Frenchie came pounding on her family door in a Tulsa neighborhood known as Little Africa that's also went up in flames. "Get your family out of here because they're killing niggers uptown," she remembered Frenchie saying. "We hid in the weeds in the hog pen," Smith told CNN. People in the mob that came to Kenny Booker's house asked, "Nigger, do you have a gun?" he told CNN. Booker, then a teenager, hid with his family in their attic until the home was torched. "When we got downstairs, things was burning. My sister asked me, 'Kenny, is the world on fire?' I said, 'I don't know, but we're in a heck of a lot of trouble, baby.'" Another riot survivor, Ruth Avery, who was 7 at the time, gives an account matched by others who told her bombs dropped from small airplanes passing overhead. The explosive devices may have been dynamite or Molotov cocktail, gasoline-filled bottles set afire and thrown as grenades. They thrown it down, and when it hit, it would burst into flames, Avery said. Only a single block remained of the 1,400 homes and businesses that made up the area known as Black Wall Street. Unmarked graves known as survivors mentioned. Many of the survivors mentioned bodies were stacked like cord wood, said Richard Warner of the Tulsa Historical Society. In a search for the facts, the commission has literally been trying to dig up the truth. Two headstones at Tulsa, Oakland Cemetery indicate that riot victims were buried there. In an effort to determine how many archaeological experts in May use ground-piercing radar only and other equipment to test the soil in a search for unmarked graves. The test picked up indications that hundreds of people have been buried in the area just outside the cemetery. Hopefully this is something that will motivate us all. And please share this with as many as you possibly can. Thank you.